Nearly a year to the day after the death of Eric Garner, Mayor de Blasio says the police department has made many reforms. We'll debate whether those changes have actually taken place, let alone made a difference. Then the Gone Girl case, the true story of a kidnapping that sounds, frankly, like a movie, and the story just keeps getting stranger. And then the class action lawsuit against Major League Baseball, nothing to do with steroids. This time fans are saying they don't feel safe, and they're suing to force the league to make major league changes at the ballparks. Our panel of attorneys will discuss whether they have a case. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Richard French, and tonight we will start with Eric Garner. It's been nearly a year, as I said, since his death, and Mayor de Blasio says there have been a lot of changes since his passing. Just take a listen.
The whole police force is being retrained. We're moving forward on body cameras. The number of unconstitutional and unnecessary stops obviously is greatly reduced. And yet at the same time we continue to drive crime down.
Now, we told you yesterday about the settlement with the city where Garner's estate got nearly $6 million. The city admitted no wrongdoing. And today we sat down with Eric Garner's mother and discussed that settlement.
I know they never admit wrongdoing, but I still have an agenda, and in the end, I want to show that there was wrongdoing in my son's case, and I'm totally faithful to we're going to show that in one way or the other. And we're still hoping that the federal government will come in and take the case, and we'll see a different light on the case.
All right, for that and much more, let's bring in our panel. Jim Kasuris, criminal defense attorney in Manhattan. He also sits on the board of directors of the New York City Criminal Bar Association, frequently lecturing at New York Law School and the bar associations in Queens and New York City. Bill Aronwald joins us tonight. He's a defense attorney and a former assistant U.S. attorney. Mayo Bartlett, attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLLC and a former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office. And Mark Furnish, professor of Brooklyn Law, as well as a practicing attorney. He's also argued before the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay. Mayo, obviously, that was part of a conversation. We're going to bring you Dominic's broader conversation tomorrow night in RFL. But she said a few things, including in that is that she wants to see justice. What does justice look like here? Because we obviously saw the court's rule, and more importantly, there was no indictment handed down in Staten Island. I know they're looking for the Justice Department to get involved, and they're also looking for systemic changes. What would they look like?
Justice would mean that the average person walking the streets in New York City, no matter what that person's background is, would be able to do so free of the fear that they're going to be killed unless they do something that absolutely requires that to be the result. So it means that there's going to be restraint on the part of law enforcement, that deadly force will be used only when absolutely necessary. It means also that with respect to the paramedics, that you're going to get care, that someone's going to give you assistance if you're in need of assistance. That's what they're sworn to do. It means that you're going to have a review of police tactics. And we understand nothing's going to be perfect, and it should continue to evolve as time goes on, and you should continue to improve. But it means that you're going to have another look at this case, in this matter in particular, from the federal government to determine if there are civil rights violations. And it'll give us some idea, hopefully, down the road with respect to whether there will be a permanent independent prosecutor and also a review of the grand jury proceedings. And
as I think you folks know at home, what Mayo was referring to right at the end is that right now, on a temporary basis, at least for the next year, the Attorney General in New York will be getting a special prosecutor to investigate police-related killings.
She wants more.
And she does want more. But before I get to that, can you define what justice looks like? Mayo, I think, articulated really well some of the key bullet points right there. But can you say in the last year that it's different, Mark, or can we define what justice looks like, or is each case different?
Well, I think each case is different. And first of all, I'm not a person of color, so it would be presumptuous of me to speak as though I have any
sorry, we made a mistake in the booking. I was confused at this point. Now, thank you for clarifying.
You know, yeah. I think you need to ask somebody who deals, a person of color who deals with the police on an everyday basis on the streets of New York. But here's the thing. I think it's exceedingly unlikely that the feds are going to get involved in this particular case for a couple of reasons. Well, 3 reasons, really. First of all, it's rare that they'll jump into a case like this to begin with. Second of all, there's not going to be any ascertainable or findable proof of racial animus, racial motivation in this case. And third of all, and most importantly, there is absolutely no pattern or practice of people of any color being indiscriminately and randomly killed on the streets of New York by police officers. That's a different question from stop and frisk, and Judge Schindlin found that there was a pattern of racially motivated stops and frisks. She was overturned by the Second Circuit on other grounds, which we've talked about here. So that's a different question from the conduct that happened
Bill,
here.
I've heard, though, and as a former working with the U.S. Attorney's Office, that if there's any of these high-profile cases that could be taken up by justice, it would be this one. The video and a lot of the other contributing facts, and also how it was perceived to have gone down in Staten Island. Do you agree with Mark that justice is going to stay away from this at the end of the day? Or do you think this case, more than Missouri, more than a bunch of other ones, has actually got a chance to go up to the feds?
No, I agree with Mark, because before the federal people can come in and institute a civil rights prosecution, there are certain components that they need to be able to establish. Mark touched upon them, and in this one, I don't think that they're going to be able to meet all of the components that they need to establish and prove. You know, getting to the question of what is justice, obviously, justice it does differ from people to people. I think from the standpoint of Mr. Garner's family, justice to them probably means they want to see someone prosecuted, convicted, and incarcerated for the death of Eric Garner.
Yep.
You said at the outset that the settlement, you know, the city admitted no wrongdoing. Well, that's nonsense. The city obviously admitted wrongdoing because they didn't write a check for $5.9 million just because they felt charitable. What happened here was the Garner family filed a notice of claim, which they're required to do. The notice of claim allows the city or the municipality to investigate the claim and make a determination as to whether they want to litigate it or they want to settle it out of court. That's exactly what happened here. So
Well, see, I think that Bill is exactly right about that. Nobody forced them to take a $5.9 million settlement. The reason these civil rights statutes exist is to deputize private litigants as private attorneys general, among other reasons, if the criminal justice system fails. So if they wanted to prove a point and not just get the money, and I don't begrudge them the money at all, litigate the case, like what happened in O.J. Simpson. There was a finding of civil liability. Go ahead, pursue your justice, get discovery, air all the facts.
Let me ask you on the math of it, because reportedly, and I know Dominic got into some of these questions, I'm not sure how clear an answer he got, but earlier in the week they turned down a $5 million offer, even though their counsel said take it, okay? Now they accepted a $5.9 million settlement, and again, without surprise, without any admission of guilt from the city. When the math gets involved as to you can't define justice just with a civil case, and there's obviously a lot of the components these guys have already talked about, how does that process work as to figuring out how much, in effect, a life is worth?
Well, how that works, when you're talking about $6 million, you're talking about a tremendous amount of money. And I don't know if I agree. You know, maybe they didn't want to take the chance at what they believed might have been an adverse verdict. Maybe they wouldn't have gotten that justice. Maybe they're looking for justice in a different way. The city, on the other hand, I don't know that I agree that writing the check is an admission of guilt. Writing that check was knowing that the case would be brought in federal court. It wouldn't be a Staten Island jury. It would be a federal jury in Brooklyn, and they were assessing their chances and how much more the verdict would be if it had gone against them.
They've made a tactical choice, and that they want the federal government to, and I don't, again, they're perfectly entitled to make this choice. They're trying to have it both ways. They want the federal government to do the litigation as opposed to putting their own skin in the game and trying the case under a lower standard of proof.
Not at all, because the federal government, first of all, you don't deputize people to substitute for the duties that the federal government has.
That's assuming that there's a cause for them to jump in.
If there is no cause, then there's no duty there. So at the end of the day, if the feds have the ability to prosecute, that's what they should be doing. If the state has the ability to prosecute, you should wholeheartedly do it or don't do it at all. It's very different. I don't believe it's an admission of guilt because they reached a settlement. Nonetheless, there clearly had to be factors that they considered that let them say, well, if we litigate this, we have some issues. The other issue, though, it's totally separate to suggest that because you settle a civil case, that you don't still want criminal liability. That happens every day. And when it comes down to the value, the $6 million, people get into accidents. People fall off of ladders and get more than $6 million. So they're going to come to, if you've lost a loved one in any fashion.
I want to ask one thing before we run out of time. Mayor de Blasio said today a lot of progress has been made in the past year. Others, civil rights advocates have said not so much. We've seen the numbers for stop and frisk go down. There has been retraining. People can debate how effective or not it's been.
It's too early.
But in 12 months, do we feel it's gone down? Things have changed?
It's too early to tell.
I would tend to say, well, from what my observations have been at least, I would say yes. And I would say that you have to give credit for the effort. And I know that a week ago I didn't do that. So that's what you have to be honest, and you have to take a step back, and it should be given.
Inconsistent defenses are fine.
But it should be given. And it may not be where we need to be, but we're getting there slowly. And some of these are not such small changes. So stop and frisk is a significant change. And I can tell you personally, as a person of color.
And by the way, we thought Mark was before the show here, so he'll be gone in that commercial break. Yeah.
When Mark's hanging out with me, he is. Don't worry about it. Right.
But I mean, I think the one significant substantive change that is being made by this administration is the fact that, and I think this should be true across the country, is there has to be funding for body cameras on all police officers.
Yep.
And the police officer should not be able to control when the camera goes on and when the camera goes off. Because that basically allows you to actually see what he sees as he or she sees it, and see how they react to whatever the perceived threat is.
Don't you think that comment was a little ill-advised that he made, because it was sort of an admission that they've been screwing things up in the past, and there are so many pending lawsuits?
I've got to bring you at home into the conversation, also get to our next topic. First, though, your take here. Go over to Facebook and Twitter and address our question today. Mayor de Blasio says there have been major police reforms here since Garner's death. Have they made things better? Are we in a better climate than we were 12 months ago? Please give us your thoughts. Now, when we come back, a case so bizarre, it really, frankly, reads like the plot of the movie Gone Girl. And in that film, a high-profile kidnapping turned out to be a hoax. But now the real-life girl who was gone has been found, and the guy accused of kidnapping her is under arrest. So why are some local cops still calling this all a hoax?